Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. HCM here. Time to check out some PTS patch notes. This is going to be for update 44. Now, there are a lot of changes coming in this patch, which I talked about in my previous video. New battlegrounds, new companions, but there are also some surprising class balance changes that I wanted to dive into in this video, just so you get a heads up of what is coming next. So let's jump right into it, starting with Dragonknight class changes, taking a look at the Ardent Flame skill line and the Inferno skill. The Cauterize morph, this now heals up to 4 nearby allies every 3 seconds rather than healing 1 nearby ally every 5 seconds. They did reduce the healing per tick by about 30%, resulting in 11% increase in healing per second with the new faster tick rate. And they also increased the cost slightly up to 3240. So I do actually like this change both for solo Dragonknight and also group content. Obviously for groups this is awesome because it's going to heal up to 4 nearby allies. So it's essentially now a group heal over time. Let's go ahead and read the developer comment here. So Cauterize has been a tool meant to help Dragonknights gain some healing for themselves and allies, but the ability always felt like it helped themselves more than their friends. Yep, that's definitely true. So they are trying to improve the healing capabilities of the class in group content and making slight adjustments to make the healing closer to something like an AoE heal over time while retaining the unique feel of the base ability. So yeah, I agree. Very cool adjustment here to the Dragonknight healing toolkit with Cauterize. Let's jump now to the Templar class. Some changes for Focus Charge. This comes from the Adric Spear skill line. So this ability and its morphs will now also taunt the enemy for 15 seconds. They increase the duration of major protection granted from this ability and the toppling charge morph to 7 seconds up from 4. And they increase the cost on all versions to 3780, sorry. So Templars now have a class ability which functions as a taunt. Now this is not an AoE taunt. Let's not get too crazy here. This taunts a single enemy. Some changes here with the morphs as well. So Explosive Charge. This morph's taunt only applies to the first enemy hit. Increase the duration of the major protection granted to 15 seconds, up from 10 to match the taunt duration. That's a very long major protection buff. That's pretty strong. This will be great even for PvP builds who want to take advantage of this. Yeah, Toppling Charge. This morph now ranks up in cost reduction, resulting in 3510 cost from before, but a bit of a damage reduction overall. So let's go ahead and read the comment here. So we're attempting to help Templar tanks feel a bit more zealous as they jump into battle by adding a taunt to this ability and its morphs. Since these don't really focus on damage, they've naturally been more beneficial for tanks to run, but didn't do enough to justify the bar slot. And this added function of a taunt and extension of major protection will give another potential tool for how you wish to lead the charge as a tank. So they've been doing this, for several patches, trying to give Templar tanks a little bit more love. This is pretty cool. I like this, and it's also going to go nicely with the other change here, which is Sun Shield. So Sun Shield, this ability and its morphs now apply minor maim to enemies in the area after 10 seconds. They also increase the damage shield scaling per enemy hit to 10% up from 4. That's quite nice, though they did increase the base cost, so just a little bit there though. And then the morphs here, Radiant Ward, this continues to increase the damage shield scaling to 20% per enemy hit. So you're going to get essentially a double damage shield if you hit 5 enemies. That's pretty cool. This morph now ranks up in the damage shield size. It also retains the cost reduction, reducing it down to 4320, okay? And Blazing Shield, this morph's damage now scales up to 33% of the damage shield, the shield absorbed at rank 4, up from 30%. Okay, so that's not a huge change overall. But let's go ahead and read the comment here. So in our ongoing crusade to improve the Templar tank experience, we're making some number tweaks on their primary defensive ability to make it feel punchier when used in the thick of a fight. So minor maim helps them potentially save a bar slot from another ability or source, while the increased base scaling reduces the variance in power on the morphs. Okay, so I do like these changes, not just for tanks, but even for solo builds and for, PvP with the Focus Charge ability. These are some good buffs, and even for solo builds, like I said, the extra scaling on the damage shield is going to be quite nice, and of course minor maim if you're a tank, that's really nice to apply to enemies in AoE radius as well. So yeah, these are really nice changes for Templars for sure. And then just Piercing Spear updated this passive to notify that its bonuses only work with players as NPCs do not block as players do. Okay, let's move on to Nightblade. Some very interesting changes for Nightblades here as well. Some surprising changes, in fact. Teleport Strike fixed an issue where this ability in Morph's initial hit was missing the 15% damage increase that cast and channel time abilities are meant to receive. Okay, that's interesting. But Lotus Fan got a bit of a buff here, so this morph now deals its initial hit in an area around the caster and applies the damage over time effect to those enemies hit. The damage over time effect has been adjusted to operate more closely to the power of Burning Talons, let's say, or Acid Spray rather than the standard dot effect to help differentiate it from other effects. So the duration of the dot is going to be 5 seconds, down from 20, increasing the tick rate to every 1 second, up from every 2, and increasing the damage per tick by 22%. I really like that. So it's going to result in less damage per cast, but more damage per second, rewarding more frequent activation. So essentially like a version of Burning Talons for the Nightblade, which is really nice. Shadow and Shadow Cloak. This is one of the biggest changes actually for this entire patch, I think. So Shadow Cloak, this ability and Shadowy Disguise are now toggled abilities. So rather than duration-based skills, they'll be toggles. So while active, the ability is going to drain 3240 magicka every 2 seconds and disable your magicka recovery until disabled or removed, rather than costing 4590 for 3 seconds. In addition to this, these abilities will now grant Born from the Shadow for 10 seconds, which is a unique buff, I guess, when the ability is activated, and again when the abilities end, which increases your damage done against enemies by 10%. Really cool buff. So let's go ahead and read the comment here. In this pass, we're looking at the opportunity cost of Shadow Cloak and trying to create a more accessible skill for any Nightblade build while simultaneously ensuring start costs associated with maintaining invisibility. So Shadow Cloak should feel smoother to weave in and out of the shadows, but obviously the disabling magicka recovery to make it harder to do this indefinitely. And they're adding that small benefit for activating the skill in PvE situations where the invisibility often doesn't work or incurs a heavy DPS loss. And yeah, that's definitely true. But either way, I think this is a pretty huge change for the Nightblade class that I don't think most of us saw coming. I know I didn't see this as something that would be coming soon. So if you play a Nightblade, I would be curious what you think about the, I guess, new approach to the skill. Do you think this is going to make you use the skill more or less? Let us know in the comments section. All right, on to Sorcerer next. And something here I kind of was expecting to see sooner rather than later. So under Daedric Summoning and Conjured Ward, they reduced the heal scaling of this ability and the Hardened Ward morph to match the scaling of Regenerative Ward, which is 10% of your max health or magicka, down from 15%. So that basically means the burst heal that you get on top of the shield is going to be smaller in Update 44. Let's see the developer comment. So originally the healing on this ability was meant to help aid non-pet sorcerers gain some on-demand healing in their kit. However, in addition to the bonus scaling of max health and magicka that Expert Summoner granted, it was creating a case where the ability could single-handedly keep you alive with no additional healing sources. That's definitely true. I found that in my latest version of the Magicka Sorcerer solo build. Very powerful, combination damage, shield, and healing skill. And they say it enabled far too much defensive power in a single button press. So yeah, Sorcerers may need to spec into a little bit more healing next patch to make up for this. You might need to slot a secondary heal. Definitely something you want to look into if you use this skill without pets on your Sorcerer. A couple other things here. Daedric Cursed fixed an issue where this ability in the Haunting Curse morphs visual effects weren't working properly. An Expert Summoner, they just talked about this passive, it now checks for permanent pets for its conditional effects rather than any active pet. Note that non-sorcerer-based permanent pets will still count towards this check. So non-sorcerer-based permanent pets. I'm not sure. I'm guessing maybe that's related to item sets. Let's see what they say in the comment here. So this change was mainly done to help clean up some of the inconsistencies in sorcerer pet versus non-pet builds, where many, quote, non-pet builds still use the Summon Storm Atronach Ultimate, and it doesn't have the same stipulations and gameplay experiences as the other permanent pets like Winged Twilight. So now calling in your Atronach to help you won't add or take away any of the passive power from this, so it can properly grant its effects to the right builds. Okay, I like this change. In fact, I did, like not run Summon Storm Atronach because of how it interacted with this passive on my solo Sorc build. So I like that they're just basically ignoring the Atronach ultimate as a pet. As a pet for the purpose of this, passive bonus. So you're not going to lose your passive bonus. You're not going to gain a passive bonus. It's not going to look at this particular skill, which I think is a good change. And then just fix an issue with overload. That's fine. Very slight change for Wardens here. Feral Guardian, they just fix an issue with the morphs on this ability. Could cause some monsters to reset if the bear engaged them before their owner did. So that should be fixed moving forward. Taking a look at the Necromancer class next. Biggest change here is probably Grave Grasp and Ghostly Embrace. If you remember last patch, they did sort of change this to be more of a DPS focused skill rather than a tank skill. Well, apparently they weren't done with that one, so they now have updated it to deal frost damage instead of magic damage. I like that. It no longer applies minor maim on each hit. However, and its areas now apply new effects instead of their original crowd-oriented effects. Okay, so new effects. Let's see. The first area now guarantees the shield status effect, which also applies minor maim. The second area now applies a frost damage over time effect for 5 seconds, similar to Burning Talons, okay? So that's not going to immobilize at all. Keep that in mind. And then the final area now generates a corpse if at least one enemy was hit rather than stunning enemies. Okay, so they really did change this, where it is really, 100% DPS focus now. Let's see what the comment says here. So last update, we shook up this morph to try and add some love to the damage-dealing Necromancer, but ran low on time. So we're reworking this morph to focus mainly on damage and leaving the other morph for control and utility. It should be more of a mainstay and high-density encounters, or even as a short-form maintenance damage over time. And then the corpse generation should also help get a few more corpses on the field from a range, as the corpse is placed under the enemy's feet, making it great for lining up the perfect shocking siphon at the back of the enemy lines. Okay, sounds good. And then Sacrificial Bones, they fix an issue where the corpse left behind could sometimes cause corpse-consuming abilities, visual effects to not appear. Okay, finally, let's take a look at the Arcanist class and Runespite Ward. Impervious Rune Ward, they reduced the size of this morph's shield after the 1 second window by 56. All right, let's see why they did that. They're introducing a new case on this morph that results in a portion of the total shield strength becoming front-loaded rather than giving a standard size shield. So the goal is to retain the feeling of being able to shrug off a tremendous amount of damage within the first second, something like a parry, while ensuring the ability has a trade-off. So if you miss the activation window, it's weaker than the safer morph option. Okay, so I get what they're saying. They wanted the skill to be like a parry. They didn't mention anything about the initial shield being stronger. I don't know if they're still updating this. Maybe it wasn't included in the patch note, or maybe they think the shield size, maybe they just think the size is strong enough. It is a pretty strong shield from what I remember. I even used this on PvP Arcanist builds because it was so strong, and it's nice to have that on-demand activation, even if it's only 1 second, to really help absorb damage. So I guess technically this is a nerf because they didn't say that they increased the primary shield size, but I will keep an eye on this one and see. And then a change on Runic Defense and Rune Guard of Freedom. They reduced the healing by 50%, but they increased the armor to 3,300, so that's just a slight increase. And they increased the duration of the crowd control immunity granted to 7 seconds. Okay, let's see what they say here. We're toning down the effectiveness of this morph from being a straight-up upgrade into a more of a conversion morph, since the crowd control immunity effect adds a tremendous amount of potential in PvP. Okay, now briefly, I do want to mention the scribing changes as well, because that's kind of related to what you'll be doing with your class skills. So there is a new grimoire getting added in update 44. I talked about this in my last video. I showed a little bit of the gameplay. It's really cool. I do like it. It's called Banner Bearer. This is going to be from the support skill line, and it allows you to throw a banner on your back, leading the charge with an AoE buff to your group's abilities that match the chosen focus. So basically the buff follows you around in an AoE, and it's going to empower your group to do a little bit more damage of specific types. We saw, for example, like it increased your flame damage, or it increased your physical damage. There was also like a pure support one that increased your group's recovery. And there is no cost to this, but it does reduce your own recovery when you toggle this active. It is a toggle as well. Now, there are some new scripts coming in update 44 as well, so this is going to just give you some more options for focus, different damage types, and so on to the existing grimoires. So, for example, Vault can do bleed damage, smash poison damage, Elemental Explosion is getting a physical damage script, Traveling Knife is getting frost damage, Wield Soul is getting flame damage, disease damage, and bleed damage. Soul Burst, that's the AoE version, that's getting disease damage, flame damage, and bleed damage. Ulfsild's Contingency is getting shock damage and bleed damage. Torchbearer is getting frost damage. That's interesting for wielding a torch. And then Trample is also getting frost damage. So those are the major changes in terms of class and skill balance coming in update 44. Just wanted to give you guys a quick overview on what to look for. As always, this is just the PTS patch, so some of these can change. We may be getting additional changes in the future for this patch as well, and if we do, I will be sure to let you know. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below, and thanks as always for watching.